Okay, so let's get started. I know there's still a lot of people sort of coming in sort of while we're going, but that's fine. The recording's there. The recording will be shared with you all as well, so you can go through it afterwards. So my name is Martin Cox. I'm a customer success manager for our partnerships. And the webinar we're going to be going through, sort of really talking a lot about communication in construction using SketchUp. Now, we're going to be talking about SketchUp, we're going to be talking about other pieces of software, how we communicate with different pieces of software. There's going to be a lot of information in this webinar. So hopefully, as we go through, it's clear. And also, I'm going to use SketchUp sort of show some live examples as well as we go through. So hopefully technology will behave and, we get everything as we go through there. So what I'll be talking about, I'll give a quick introduction. We'll talk, about SketchUp, about Trimble, just really sort of in more information, what we'll be talking about in the webinar. We'll be discussing, why construction is hard. There's so many factors in this, and, we'll talk about that as well. Introducing sort of connected construction, really where we talk about, why communication in construction is so important, and then how SketchUp can be a big part of this, and how SketchUp's used. We'll talk about some real life examples, and I'll show some SketchUp models, sort of going into some more details around that communication element around it. So just a little bit of an introduction. So first of all, a little bit about myself. So I actually started work in the construction industry. It was scarily 30 years ago now. And, I spent some time sort of around communication and in the construction and sort of working within sort of the different software, sort of working in that. And then I sort of moved into sort of working with training and consulting sort of CAD software. And I've been doing that for sort of over 15 years now. So working with multiple companies, helping deliver customer success, teaching best practices, and sort of training with that. So, hopefully I can share some of that knowledge, some of that experience that I've had throughout those years as we go through. Okay, so a little bit about Trimble, and sort of Trimble has been around for quite some time. So, Trimble was founded in 1978, and Charlie Trimble sort of he was recognizing where things were going with GPS, and then spent, sort of the next years really developing commercial GPS products. And it was very quick that, or sort of through these years, realizing that, where these GPS products could sit within construction, within farming, within sort of the market solutions that Trimble has become sort of known. And, working with those up until now has created sort of huge success in Trimble. Now, tying that in with SketchUp, so actually this year SketchUp is going to be 25 years old. SketchUp was founded in 2000 by two people in Colorado, and they wanted to create a tool where sort of, they wanted CAD for everyone. And this is where they sort of created SketchUp. And, straight away the success sort of grew pretty quickly. And that's when it was sort of recognized by sort of Google to sort of help within their sort of growth and really sort of expanding that knowledge and working with sort of Google Earth. So, SketchUp was acquired sort of in 2007. So, that's when sort of Google really sort of put some power behind SketchUp there. And using that, sort of with Google, it then sort of really grew. And, then Google was sort of like, okay, we've done sort of our Google Earth part. And Trimble recognized of like, actually, we know exactly what to do with SketchUp. And Trimble was acquired by SketchUp, sorry, was acquired by Trimble in 2012. And, really this has grown from strength to strength, and you'll see the power that we now have really with some of the capabilities of SketchUp, where we're used within these sort of massive construction companies, also small construction companies around the world. Um, so as we go through. Okay, so just some quick numbers about Trimble. So really sort of being able to say that, we've got sort of huge backing there. There's over 12,000 employees in Trimble. And, this has really helped grow SketchUp to where we are today. And, this is why we can have these webinars of talking about our experience. This isn't something that, are ideas. These are sort of real life experiences. And we can see this that, SketchUp is used by the largest construction companies around the world. SketchUp is fast and flexible. It's an easy product to use. And, it's also used in a large number of construction workflows alongside other pieces of Trimble software, construction software, and as we go through as well. And, this is what we'll explain, but we can see some of these names, and, these names are hopefully familiar with you, that, these sort of companies, again, with thousands of employees. And, we have people with sort of one license of SketchUp just helping with some of their construction workflows, through to thousands of licenses of SketchUp helping in sort of multiple areas of their construction. Now, understanding why SketchUp fits and why, really our connected construction and sort of the software workflows help. It's simply because construction is hard. And construction is hard for many reasons. They can be very complex, unique projects. So, we often talk about these large projects, but that's not always, the case of why things are hard. It's if you're building the same building in multiple locations, it throws up different problems. So the weather conditions, they can vary. The soil conditions, there's different soil conditions depending on where you're building. Different permit conditions, access, road access in the middle of a city is very different from if you're building sort of in the middle of sort of an urban landscape. If you're building somewhere where there aren't lots of buildings or people, that can actually mean that there's lower availability of skills. Materials can be harder to deliver there. So combining all of these reasons, it means, construction is difficult. And really, we all sort of understand that construction projects, they often overrun. And we can see 92% of construction projects exceed schedules. The majority exceed budgets, 85%. Shortages of people. And, quite a scary one is that sort of 50% of companies, or more than 50% of companies, still use lots of paper forms and sort of spreadsheets. This means that really sort of an average profit in architecture, engineering, and construction is only 4%, because, these margins are so tight because of these areas. And a big problem around this is the fact of poor communication. And the communication, this means it leads to sort of design errors, wasting time, wasting resources, and then sort of projects become over budget. So, and this can affect repeat business, it can affect reputation. So, we really want to improve this communication, the sort of request for information on site, how these are handled. And this is a big part where we sort of look at that connected construction. So first of all, what is connected construction? Now, connected construction We look at them, talk about like the three C's, and these are, fundamental building blocks within that construction process that, they work across the entire Trimble portfolio and, also other pieces of software as well. SketchUp is a true collaboration tool, and we'll certainly talk about that. So the three C's in connected construction. So we have connected. Now, this is breaking down these data silos to improve interoperability, document management. So, the benefit to customers that all aspects and the different phases of a construction workflow, are easily shared, easily discussed, and easily understood. So, everyone can sort of work through this as well. Then we have our content. So streamlining our workflows means that we have, our library of data. It's all curated, so it can be traceable. And we know then the benefit from this means that everyone is looking at the same thing. So somebody's not looking at an old version of a drawing and, then to sort of say, okay, this is a different version, and mistakes are made there, and people know where something goes, how it needs to be installed, and the equipment that you have at that time. Okay. Then our third C, constructible. So our models need to be precise. They're constructible models. The data and workflows are driving this process. That the data that's provided is so accurate you can build from it on time, on budget, and actually plan from the data that you have. So acting on the sort of customer benefits here, having this constructible data early on in the life cycle means that the teams can anticipate issues early, avoid those costly mistakes, and improve overall performance for better sort of bottom line and profits within construction. So we have proven results around this. We have some huge projects that have worked in connected construction within Trimble, and we've seen a significant improvement within rework, that things are sort of executed faster in the field. There's less waste, and just simply the numbers around, how many people are connected and how many models are being shared. And we're seeing sort of real changes within that process within construction. Now, where SketchUp sits within this connected construction workflow, and the simple answer to this is in a lot of places. Now, I know this graphic is quite small, and I've seen that there's been some chat. We can make sure slides are shared. We can make sure there's, well, as you know, the recording's going to be shared afterwards. And, really sort of, so you'll be able to see these. But we can see this example workflow here. Where SketchUp sits within this workflow is literally right from the beginning of creating those concept models. The planning within the models, and then we start looking at other pieces of software like AutoCAD and Revit as well. Designing around the models, developing, analyzing those models. We have other sort of pieces of software as well, and visualizing. And then this part of iterating those different versions of the models. Yes, we go around in sort of circles there, lots of changes, but SketchUp sits easily in there as well because we can see fast changes, sharing of those models. And then, we have the approvals of the models, full detailed design, and then again, we're sort of with Revit and AutoCAD, or sort of Tekla structures, and sort of other Tekla Trimble software as well. And then construction sort of phasing and helping within SketchUp the visualization of the planning of construction. So a big part around this as well. And then, we end up with our building. But a key part of this is our connected construction. And, the part we talk about this sort of with Trimble Connect comes with sort of the SketchUp license. And Trimble Connect, cloud-based platform that connects the right people and the right data, so everyone sort of has access to this. Okay. So how does SketchUp sort of really help communicate? So now we're really going to sort of focus in with SketchUp. Now, it's worth mentioning that as I'm talking through the next slides here and with our sort of example demos as well, we're going to be looking at multiple versions of SketchUp. So there are different sort of levels of SketchUp. And, you know, we have SketchUp Go, SketchUp Pro, SketchUp Studio, and there's other ones as well. And they have different sort of tools and capabilities. And what I would say is, I'm not going to go into details in this webinar about all these different versions. Best thing to do is talk to your partners, talk to reseller, and, you know, and they will find the best fit for you, depending on sort of the workflows that you're looking at for SketchUp. So, you know, just sort of be aware that some of the tools, if depending on the version of SketchUp you have, you may not have, but you know, they come in different versions, and I'll try and point them out as we go anyway. But yeah, your partners will be able to help with that and sort of recommend the best fits. So where does SketchUp sit within sort of that communication workflow, sort of that structure workflow? Now, we know that, you know, sort of where SketchUp is used. And it's, you know, we sort of understand where SketchUp sits. So, you know, we know that the majority of users are using SketchUp for visualization. Also, you know, presenting sort of ideas and sharing those models as well. And, you know, documenting this. And then we start looking more around sort of that model sharing, coordination within sort of whether it's construction sites, estimating, analysis, and then fabrication. So, you know, we can really see sort of where the power of SketchUp sits within our different workflows. And, you know, whether sort of it's sort of construction contractor or general contractor perspective, there are sort of different use categories as well. So, you know, right at the beginning, business pursuits and bidding, you know, using SketchUp to create sort of quick models, quick concepts, make changes very quick and easily to present those ideas right at the beginning. Because, you know, showing a 3D model can sort of create a lot more sort of impact to people. Everyone understands a 3D model. So, you know, at the beginning, sort of quick and easy ideas, that approach of sort of saying, okay, how about, you know, ideas of glass here, glazing round the front, and, you know, we'll sort of have a look at that as well. But then also by creating these models, being able to, you know, estimates of like, this is how much material we're probably going to need for this to cut down on waste. This is how much insulation. This is how much timber. This is an idea. And we can use tools within SketchUp or external extensions as well, and to be able to look at those. Project coordination. Now, this is a major part of construction costs, because making sure the most up-to-date information is in front of people is important, because a major waste of money in construction is people being there and then discovering they can't work in a particular zone because there's perhaps something else going on. The machinery that's required, then suddenly of like, oh yeah, we haven't, you know, we haven't hired that correct machinery for, you know, installation of the cladding or installation of the glazing, because we weren't aware that this was going to be available. So, you know, having that project coordination, the real life models, you know, helps sort of with that as well. Then, you know, sort of costs are also tied in sort of having those correct models available to us. So it's making sure that the models are correct, you know, they are constructible models, and we can communicate those as well. And then communication, literally those design services. So, you know, the designers have done their work. They then try and sort of communicate that information to people to say, no, this is where this goes. This is how this goes together. And SketchUp also makes that easy as well. Okay. So, let's have a look at some examples around this. Um, what I'll say, I've seen, there's a number of sort of people chatting. Yeah, slides will be shared at the end. If you have questions, please don't use the chat. There is the question and answer box there. The reason for that is because they get recorded in the questions and answers. And also, there's sort of a number of chats there that sort of people saying hello. And, I don't want to make sure questions get lost. So please make sure you use the questions and answers sort of tool within there. So they then get recorded there. Okay. Right. So looking into more detail around these use cases and workflows. So right at the beginning, project pursuits and bidding. Particularly when you're looking at sort of small, medium contractors, they work on smaller projects. SketchUp can really sort of take a more formal role in the estimation process. So, looking at SketchUp's report tool. Within the reporting tool, and you can simply create reports on the quantities of components and things like that. And, that's something that some people use a lot for, that sort of estimating, but it can be taken even further when you look at like a third party estimation tool like Quantifier Pro or Estimator 2. These, both help design firms provide real-time cost calculations. And as the project model evolves, it will keep sort of the sort of on top of that as we go. So yeah, generate reports. That feature is there. If you go under File, you've got Generate Reports, and you can customize those reports around which areas of metadata or the component sort of information you need. Okay. There's also that project coordination. So the 4D sort of schedule visualizations. With the addition of time, we can actually sort of create these 4D schedules and, different levels. So basic 4D sequences have, sort of been created within a planning model to show like, where the site is going to be, the sort of the stages around a site, and, where things are accessed there. Or again, you can use sort of different extensions like Phases 4D or Lumen, Navisworks, that actually create, some of those sort of schedules as well. Now that's, one area within sort of that coordination. Another one is in sort of project coordination around site logistic plans. Complexity of construction projects, creating site logistic plans is standard practice now. Often, they can be sort of a static 2D drawing that remains the same, but with SketchUp, these plans can contain, full elements around the sort of construction, as in we can show delivery routes, locations of where things are going to be. It's great to sort of be able to communicate, the site design to a customer saying, okay, this is where, your site is going to be. This is where we're going to put our equipment. This may be where you're going to lose some parking spaces. So, this is sort of where the communication comes in. But, understanding those process, also being able to identify areas where there are potential inefficiencies, areas of concern or conflicts, like we mentioned about those timings of saying, well, while the glazing is going up, people cannot work underneath there. So, you have that area of glazing, you don't bring in the team to do some groundworks underneath the glazing. So, we can show that. And SketchUp is often used in these logistic plans because of its flexibility, because of 3D Warehouse being able to bring in and say, okay, this is where a crane is going to be, this is where a lorry is going to be. And, working within sort of those detailed site logistics. Again, you can see how clear it is. With our sort of 3D plans here, we can show delivery routes, delivery locations, storage locations, those areas as well. And it really helps with all of those things that I mentioned. So this is a huge and sort of big part of where SketchUp sits within sort of a lot of our construction customers. Now, around also something that's happened, and this, still happens on a regular basis, these construction mock-ups. Now, these are basically showing like potential complicated areas, and construction companies spend thousands of pounds, euros, dollars, we're all over the world in this webinar, but so, they spend a lot of money actually showing a physical model of how these sort of in these instances how these glazing assemblies are going to go together. They're quite complicated. Now, the physical mock-up is usually developed before the actual assembly is going to be performed, so the trades can learn how things are put together. Now, that stays on site. It literally sits there, so people come over and they have a look at that. But again, a big part of this is creating those virtual mock-ups. So these virtual mock-ups, they're created, first of all, before. So they're even sort of created nice and early so they can assist the assembly processes. During design models, they can be exploded. They can be sort of shown with more detail. Even with those physical models that we saw, things can be hidden. So they're carefully designed so that they're almost showing those layers. Whereas a virtual mock-up it can explode, it can be hidden. So we can show details here that you could never make, like this example here, seeing how that sits on top. Detail is zooming in, cuts and sort of those crops there as well. And as you can imagine, these are much cheaper to sort of make. And also it can go into sort of much more levels of detail. So, those three-dimensional details can really show the clarity, so it's more sort of clearly understood on the job site. And these are all real examples. These are examples of sort of where we've worked with customers around the world. Okay. So let's get into some actual examples here. Let's start having a look at sort of actually SketchUp here. Now, within our sort of workflow and the next example, so I'm going to show a video here, and it will help explain this because I'm going to talk through these sort of different options. And I want to walk you through showing how some of this integration sort of happens. And, we're looking at sort of using Connect here, using SketchUp right from sort of the beginning of a workflow and seeing how that expands all the way through. So right from literally setting up that site, but then we're going to introduce some other tools and see how they work within this workflow. So this is a video that I am going to talk through. I may pause it sometimes. I will be completely honest. I sort of don't believe in sort of trying to trick anyone with any sort of video editing. The reason this is a video is we're showing a huge amount of information, different tools that I would be swapping in between, and it's sort of much easier using sort of this option here. So starting right at the beginning, we'll just start this video here. So we can literally import the site information using add location in SketchUp. So it will be a geolocated model. And, using sort of the geolocation add location, we can import map data straight away. So bringing in this map data of our model that we're going to look at, we then have our site plan. And this does contain sort of the tags there regarding the terrain. It's not overly bumpy, this area, but it does show that terrain for the model. And it means we can then quickly create sort of a plan just using some sort of quick 3D models. And, we'll jump to sort of a model here saying, okay, this is how our site looks with some models around it. So this gives us an idea. We can look at shadows. We can look at how things are going to be, models, buildings that are going to be in place that will help with like crane positioning as well. Using a tool such as SketchUp pre-design, because our model is geolocated, we can use pre-design to actually look at sun and weather data, which will help with the construction process, because we can actually look at historical weather data to see the the type of light that we're going to get, how much rain we get, and like cranes, wind conditions as well. So it gives us a lot of information here. It also goes further into architecture, but we're not going to look at that one as well. Using a scan of the site, so opening this with Scan Essentials, and this is in sort of the different versions of SketchUp. So if you have SketchUp Pro, you won't have Scan Essentials, but we can actually import a point cloud of our site. So we have a real life scan here using sort of Trimble's scanning hardware, and we can actually see the site now with regarding to sort of those building conditions around. So we can actually look at how accurate our models were with the actual buildings that were scanned. And, we can really sort of start analyzing it and making sure that it's like, well, yeah, let's make sure we get these in the right position. Again, particularly important for access and machinery, because, we need to know sort of with potential overhangs looking at on site. So we can see here, actually, there's a little bit of a roof that's possibly we've modeled a bit lower. So using sort of the SketchUp tools there, we can easily sort of adjust that roof so it fits in with our point cloud. Now, the point cloud, it's a great reference there. Of course, we've got our sort of point cloud available. It means that we can see trees. It means that we can see, like I said, particularly with deliveries and access around there as well, so we can make sure we're aware of those trees. But there are a number of other tools within Scan Essentials where we can show sort of things clearer. We can, change the point size of our point cloud, but we can also actually analyze the model so we can compare the point cloud to our SketchUp model. So what we're showing here is that using the inspection tool within Scan Essentials, we can actually show if our model is correct. And on here it says 200 millimeters. So that little red area means that our model isn't quite right with the inspection there. But, there's a lot of information. Then we have our site. Using SketchUp, we can now create our concept design for a model. So concept design at the beginning, we're not thinking about like how we're actually going to build this. This isn't, sort of our full constructible model. This is showing some ideas. So, this is sort of a video here showing how quick and easy it can be for SketchUp to create a model to show visually for people of saying, okay, this is our site, this is our plan. What do we think about the idea of the model here? We can create sort of simple block models, using components. So each of those floors is its own component. So we edit one, it edits all of them. And we can then say, well, actually, let's put some glazing on the corner here. Let's, put some of those brick materials on. And, we can sort of place our roof how we want it. Again, just think about how sort of quick and easy it is that we're doing this, but for our customers to be able to say, okay, is this what you're thinking? Let's have a, look at our site here. And is this the type of thing you were looking at? So being this fast, this easy to do is tremendously powerful. And, just creating sort of those simple models is great. And then, within that planning, we can start sort of thinking about, our site there. So we're just finishing up here, combining that with our point cloud. We can see that how it sits within existing trees, basically the existing site that is actually there. With that scan, we can incorporate that. So, we need to be aware of those trees, particularly with construction. It's like, right, well, we're not going to put a crane there. So, it's being aware of our environment. And we can also, start thinking about that on the interior as well. So it basically takes our model and then those iterations around the model and making sure that, we have those. Okay. So we've got a little further with this. We've added some logos, a little bit more glazing detail. But then bringing that on site, again, just being able to show the details, we can really start actually, saying how it's going to look within how this sort of glazing detail is going to be made around the staircase and a little bit more information about like the interior of the buildings. So now we're sort of moving into kind of, we have an architectural model. But taking this, we can, again, communication around that. We start having our model. We can sort of start putting this into Trimble Connect. We can look at this and then say, okay, well, using the different tools in SketchUp, we can actually have our sort of line elevation models and creating sort of our information packs to sort of say in layout to show, the drawings and sort of capabilities around here. So, we're exporting this to layout, Trimble Connect in this instance to start with, but then within layout, we can have our drawings and at least show people of like, yep, this is how your model is going to sit. This is how intentions of our training rooms, just an idea of how it's going to look. But then we can take it even further with connected construction. So working in Trimble Connect here at the moment. So inside Trimble Connect, we have literally the structural models. We have the MEP models, which are the sort of the electrical and plumbing models. So, our mechanical engineering, electrical and plumbing, sorry. So, we have all of the models within Connect. Now, the great thing about this is once they're in Connect, we can then use these actually within SketchUp. So we've imported the Tekla structures model in SketchUp here, and we can see how that Tekla model looks. But we've also imported the MEP model in here, so we can look at the mechanicals around our sort of ductwork and piping. So we've got our sort of HVAC equipment there. And now we've got our electrical equipment. We can see where actual plug sockets are going to be. And these are real life positions within our model. So looking at the model now within our sort of our architectural model in SketchUp, we can see those correct locations of plumbing. So, these sort of bathroom accessories, these aren't, from 3D Warehouse. These are actually from the MEP model, which is where they're going to be. The yellow parts, these are the electrical models. So we can see where light sockets, plug sockets, fire, sort of detectors, smoke detectors are going to be within the site. So these are the actual locations. So for our like training suite that we have in the corner here, we can see those plug sockets in the floor. Are they in the correct locations? So, we actually have sort of within there as well. So, we have that information. We can see that they're going to be in the right place. Now, this works on multiple things. We can see that we're going to have, the plug sockets. This is something we've worked with hospitals that, they really like this because they need to see access around certain things. But the good thing about this is like we've got a design model around here for our reception, but actually that floating sort of light box is sitting directly over the top of a, sort of air conditioning unit. So, that's something that needs to be sort of looked at. But within our model, we can actually see where, so there's some exposed steel work there. It's like, right, yep, we're going to need to box that in. So, we can quickly sort of highlight that. In Trimble Connect, we can put that as a, information request and say, look, we need to box this in. But we can then also look through around everything within there to say, yep, we're making sure we've got all our sort of sockets and information as we go through. And the great thing is because we've got this level of detail model here, we can then actually bring this into V-Ray for SketchUp. So again, in sort of versions of SketchUp. We have V-Ray included, and all of these little lines and circles, these are actually like light information for V-Ray, so we can do a full render to show how it's going to look, realistically. So we've got our lighting here. We can actually see that in this instance, the air conditioning unit has been moved. So we remain that sort of light part there. It's all been boxed in, but we actually have those sort of switches and the fire detectors within our render. So, this is a sort of real life render, within sort of our reception. This can also be sort of useful externally as well, because you're rendering everything. So, we're highlighting here that, we've got all of the sort of MEP equipment and the HVAC equipment are appearing in our model. When we communicate that, we can show sort of the lighting information. So we've got that sort of lighting detail up the wall on the internals there. But even little details like there's some plant on the roof there. This is something that often catches people out. It's like, oh, I didn't know there was going to be a large sort of unit on the roof. So actually having this connected construction information shows, that model there, sort of all the way through. And, we can see our steelwork through the glazing and that plant equipment on the roof. And also this model was for Leeds. So of course it's, they're showing somebody with an umbrella, because it's, once we're up north a little bit there. So, we have that, but, this one's sunny there, but we can show those existing trees and as well as part of the rendering. And again, some of that electrical equipment, the ducting above the windows. Okay. So as you can see, that's a lot of information that we showed there. And, we looked at Trimble Connect. We looked at Tekla structures. We looked at Trimble scanning. We looked at MEP, all around the SketchUp model. So, our SketchUp model was there sort of all the way through. And, there's other elements, and I just seen a question come in around sort of that air conditioning unit being hidden. In Trimble Connect, there is actually a conflict option. So it will show where sort of models are actually sort of hitting, and there are conflicts sort of within Trimble Connect. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to sort of have a look through here. We're not having a look at that one again. I want to go into SketchUp now. So I know we're sort of coming up, well, not time. I want to make sure there are time for questions. So I'm going to be pretty quick here, showing some of those features in a little bit more detail, actually in SketchUp. So the first one I'm going to show is SketchUp Scan Essentials. So this is my scanned model here. And this is quite a large scan from a drone of a potential site. And the good thing is that, using some of those tools, like I said, this isn't just sort of a dummy model here. I can actually sort of take my site, and if I sort of quickly sort of sketch or just add a rectangle there of the area that we're going to be constructing, and I'm going to select that area or that square that I've just drawn, and using some of the tools within Scan Essentials, I can create a ground mesh, and this is actually going to create a full surface here of that particular area that I can then work with in SketchUp. So I've now got my ground mesh. What I'm going to do, if I just hide that point cloud, I can actually see I've now got that ground mesh that I can work with. I can select my ground mesh and I can turn that into a solid as well. So, again, these are in the Scan Essentials tools. So, we can see we have that model there sort of working with. Now, there are other things we can do. We can, cut out the area that we're going to be working. You can actually analyze the area to see how much sort of soil movement there's going to be. But within our site planning model that we're here, so I've got, kind of that area, the solid, I've sort of sketched on the area, and we can go through step by step to say, okay, this is where the fence markers need to be. the fence mark for the site, that site office using models from the 3D warehouse, the crane position of our model. This is sort of great sort of with that, within there. The storage zones that we can specify to say this is where our materials are going to be stored. The loading areas using sort of our 3D warehouse models of the areas where the machinery are going to be. And, we can even start putting a little more information in, such as, the dig that we're going to have there. And, using the sort of Tekla, so that's a Tekla structures model, we can show the building. So this is, a simple example, taking sort of our Scan Essentials site model there and bringing that through. Now, if I go back to our sort of loading and machinery, or actually our dig on this one, again, another example of where SketchUp is used quite a lot, is showing where sort of health and safety equipment is needed. So, that's a big part there as well. Okay. Now I'm going to show a slightly more detailed model. And again, sort of an example of, how we can sort of take this a little bit further. Now, this is, this is a great looking model. So already it looks like I'm looking at a render, but we're using the new SketchUp 2025 environment and materials. So we can actually see that's how the model sort of looks in that instance. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to go right back to the beginning here, because, I saw a question come in around sort of, working with other models and, collaborating with other models. So what we've got here is a Revit import. So this is using the Revit importer that we have in SketchUp. Again, different versions of SketchUp. So, have the sort of Revit there. So we've got our model that we then know, but we can sort of then have a look at that site and using sort of our overlays here within, our styles. So, our styles that we set up here, we can sort of set those and set the edits and have our watermark over the top. So this is how this is done. A lot of people think, oh, how are we doing that? But that's a watermark over the top, a PNG watermark. So we have our excavation of our site. We look at our loading zones, and then we can really sort of look at, the deliveries. We can control with the arrows specifying direction of movement around the site. Now, using scenes and different transitions here, we can start creating some, quite cool effects to say, okay, the rebar is going to be laid in that week. Then we have a look, we start doing the pour, so more rebar. We have the cement pour there. Then we've got the second part of the pour, and, lovely fun little details of the concrete coming out of the trucks there. The framework's going to go in, so, within our pour, and then start putting up our scaffolding, and, we can have sort of our scaffolding zones and, label those to say that, yep, these are the staircases that we're going to be having. Because labeling those staircases with our detailed zoning, it's simply being able to say like staircase 3 is going to be out of action on these particular times. And we're still using the Revit model. So this is still the Revit model, but basically because using the Revit importer, it recognizes sort of the layers, we can switch things off, such as walls and sort of glazing there as well. We can start sort of really sharing site plans, so, around this, and people can sort of start marking those. The signage that's going to be required on site, we can specify the sort of those requirements for sites. Within Trimble Connect, you can link PDFs to those particular signs and say, this is what we need to be loading. We can import more IFC files. So this time we're importing a Tekla structures model to show that, we have our sort of roofing steelwork there as well. And we can see our roof structure. The plant cages that are going to be assembled on site. The health and safety that we're going to be looking at, more signage, and even this is something we see a lot as well, little 3D models that show that you need full harnessing if you're going to be working on a roof. Lots more drawings, visualizations here. And, then we can sort of get back to sort of our visual model that we looked at. So, I wanted to sort of talk through that, pretty quickly there as well. Okay. Right. So I know I've covered a lot there. So what I'm going to do, I want to move on to questions because I know a lot of questions have come in and I've got 10 minutes to answer as many as I can, sort of to go through there. So let's have sort of a look as we go through. So is it possible in SketchUp Pro to set project north and site north, coordinates? So looking with that, we saw at the beginning, if sort of when you import like add location, we can set that up so that I'll just bring that across to that screen. We can actually geolocate our model, and if I want to show that model, sorry, it's hidden. That's because it's a large model. That's fine. So I can actually choose where I want this model to be geolocated within our site. So I can choose the actual location of that model, and that will then, have that coordinate system there as we go through. A couple of people have asked about the generate report feature. So if we go within sort of file here, and I turn that off that. Yeah, generate report. So see, that was just complete blindness on my part. So generate report there. This is how you would set up and generate those reports. It will create a number of sort of settings. It's just loading up our settings because again, it's looking at quite a large model here. So that's just loading up sort of the report generator. And it can already start to see that there are a number of reports in here like concrete volume. So there's report that's been created and, we can then export those reports in sort of spreadsheets, component quantities reports, and I can run those. I'm not going to do that now because it will just take a little bit of time, but that's how to sort of create new templates, new reports, and you can start creating things like bill of materials, which I saw there was another question around that in as well. So it will utilize components and it will then show you how many of these particular components and the sort of area around that. But, there's a number of reports there. If I edit a particular report, like the Curtin Wating Mullins report here, we can see this is how it's created within the attributes of the models, and then it actually will create and export that report. So, very powerful tool that not everyone sort of knows about. So, okay. So yeah, people have mentioned about sort of translating work they do in other pieces of software such as Revit and ArchiCAD. IFC, so when you import IFC models like from ArchiCAD, then it will recognize sort of IFC sort of capabilities there. We've done a lot of work on IFC compatibility around SketchUp. So, it makes sure it recognizing the IFC metadata and sort of component metadata there as well. I said about the Revit importer. So, we have sort of that direct Revit import to get your model in SketchUp so you can work through there as well. Okay. Do you have any documentation, Trimble Connect CAD? So if that's sort of information around sort of how to use sort of different 2D drawings in Trimble Connect, yes, there's sort of help around that. Is SketchUp compatible with Mac? Yes, it is. Now, there are some aspects, if you look at SketchUp Studio, that's not sort of really aimed at Mac because like V-Ray and sort of the Revit importer there. But SketchUp Pro is definitely used in Mac there as well. Regarding sort of PC spec, we're not using sort of the highest PC specs really here. When you get into rendering, yes, some of the graphics cards there are quite important. But regarding sort of PC specs, depending on what you want to do, just yeah, well, again, talk with your partner. They'll certainly be able to help with that. Clash detection on MEP and structure elements. In Trimble Collect, we have clash detection. So these reports can be run in Trimble Connect. I wish I had more time to show you that, but again, partners will be able to help with that. Questions around Trimble Connect, absolutely, sort of be able to help with that one. We mentioned that. So yeah, a few people have asked regarding like import of Revit. Yeah, Revit import, and it really is as simple as just saying import and searching for the Revit model, and that will come across. And like I said, within a Revit model, it will then in those tags be able to say, I'm trying to open too many things in this model here because I try to be as quick as possible. So within the Revit model, it recognizing like the walls, the structural columns, roofs and cement and floors and doors and curtain walls, it actually recognizing those sort of models there as well. Can you learn SketchUp by yourself? Yes, there are lots of free courses. To be honest, if you search up SketchUp Learning in YouTube, there are thousands of YouTube videos. How often is SketchUp used as a site planning tool? Significantly, hundreds of construction companies are using it around that. How is it traditionally done? Yeah, often with 2D drawings that get out of date very quickly and weekly planning meetings to discuss what things are going to be closed that week. So, yeah. Okay. There are lots more questions. Actually, there are two people asked the same question, and I'm going to very quickly show that. SketchUp import DWG files. Import DWG files from AutoCAD. Yep, file, import. And you'll see that SketchUp was designed about being collaborative. And we can see so many different files. AutoCAD DWG files, bring those in, tidy them up, actually use them for sort of extruding walls and things like that. Okay, language, yes, different languages are sort of set up in here. The version of SketchUp I'm using today, this is SketchUp Studio. So SketchUp Studio has the Revit importer, it has the point clouds, so you'll see the menus. I've got the Revit menu here, I have the Scan Essentials or the point cloud menus here, and I also have the Revit importer as well. Okay, I am right on time, and I wanted to say a massive thank you for so many people turning up, so many questions. We'll make sure we do sort of get back to the questions there. We'll put together a document around like these frequently asked questions. Thank you so much. We only do these webinars because people want them and attend. I've covered a lot of information, and yeah, coming up to the end there. I hope it wasn't too rushed, but please ask as many questions with partners with us as we can. We are always happy to help. So, like I said, massive thank you from me, and hopefully speak to you all again soon.